Sir, look from the underground.
Brutality on street. Casualty is
Hello and welcome to The Underground. This is the podcast where we talk about the world and how crazy and weird and messed up it is. I'm your host, Duncan Michael McPherson, and today on the podcast what I want to talk about is part two of what I talked about last time was collaborative problem solving. Now I want to apply this idea of collaborative problem solving to the government, how we run our democracy. So let's get into it. If you haven't seen the first one, you should probably go back and watch it, because I'm going to talk about some terminology that comes from it that you might not understand. If you know what collaborative problem solving is, don't bother with the first one. So the idea that I want to explore here is how do we use this idea of collaborative problem solving to run a country. Like, it seems kind of crazy to try to take something that you would use between a teacher and a kid or a parent and a kid and then apply it to an entire country. But I think that this is such a good model because it works on so many levels and it's so versatile, right? Like, it works in so many different ways with so many different relationships. Really, any relationship, this process works. So we're going to go through the three steps: empathy, needs meeting, like putting your needs and concerns on the table, and then coming up with solutions. Those are the three steps, and we're going to go through them with examples from the government and different groups of people that, you know, we could say, like, for example, like anti-vaxxers. They're like the ODD kids in the classroom. I don't mean to be insulting to anti-vaxxers either, because I don't think that's helpful, and that's part of the point that I'm trying to make. But yeah, they're difficult because they're saying no, right? The government says we have this vaccine that works, and you should take it, you know. And I mean, a little different when it comes to COVID because it's such a new vaccine, but older vaccines, like, it seems like just take it. It's good for everybody. Like, why aren't you taking it? And now I sound like a teacher yelling at a kid, just do it. Stop arguing with me. Just do it. And the ODD kid says no every time, no matter what. And it's not even about the thing a lot of the times with ODD. So that's what I feel like it is with a lot of these, like, subgroups of our society right now, is that they're really just saying no because they don't trust the government, which, do they have a reason to? I don't think so. Like, the government hasn't done a good job of building trust, because trust is built on empathy. And so if they use this, format, this method, they're going to build trust with people and not need to force them to take vaccines, because they're going to trust their government. So anyway, the reason I'm doing this podcast is because Joe Biden came out recently and he said, he made that statement about guns and nukes. I don't know what the comment was exactly, but he said something like that your AR-15s, which he's trying to get banned, or I don't know what he's trying to do, but he's trying to get rid of them. And he basically said they don't stand a chance against a nuke, my nukes. And that's a crazy thing for a president to say. And it's not like he's threatening other people. He's threatening his own people. And we should be disturbed by that, I think. And if you're not, I don't know what's going on with you. Like, really, like, I mean, honestly, like, all jokes aside, like, if you're not concerned that he's threatening his own people with nukes, why would you do that? That doesn't seem very productive. Okay. And so this goes back to what I talked about in the last podcast about the power dynamics, right? He is using force because he's like, I am powerful. You're not. I have nukes at my disposal. You do not. You have these little guns that don't even matter compared to my nukes. Which, leads you to the question of, like, if they don't matter, then why are you so concerned about them, right? But anyway, the point is that he's flexing, right? That's exactly what he's doing. That's a good way of putting it. He's flexing, right? He's the more powerful one, and he's showing it. This is the same as a teacher in a classroom who says to a kid, go to the office, like, I'm in charge, like, or a parent that says, do as I say, because, and they say, why? And because I'm your mom, blah, right? Like, that is such a bad way to deal with kids. Anyway, I know we probably all have done it, but I know that I have, but sometimes you just want to force them to do whatever they need to do. And sometimes I think with kids, you do maybe need to do that sometimes. Although the more you can implement this, the better. But as a government, that's all we see. I really believe that that's really all we see. We see force, and that's the only way that we know how to deal with people who are not following the rules, or not even like laws, but just like social etiquette, right? I don't know, like wearing masks, right? Like, it's not like, I don't know if it's a law or not. People keep saying it's a mandate. I don't know what that means compared to a law. But anyway, it works for everything, and all we see is force. Well, the only way that the government knows how to deal with its people is force, and that's what the police. That's why we're so upset at the police all the time, because, and that's why the police end up in these situations where they're shooting people who are innocent, oftentimes black people, right? Is because the only way, I watched the George Floyd video. I wasn't planning on talking about this, and I just thought, like, if that cop, not Derek Chauvin, he came in later, but the cop that, well, maybe it was him at first, but if the cops that were around, if anybody understood collaborative problem solving, that situation would have been avoided completely, because all they try to do is force him into the car instead of taking some time, and empathizing, like the cops do this. The interesting thing is, like, a detective would do this in, like, what's it called? Like an interrogation, right? Where you have, like, the murderer and you're trying to get him to confess. They use these things. They connect with them on a level. They empathize. They talk about, like, oh, we understand why you would do it. Anyway. But they don't do it, like, out on the street, and then they end up killing people. So, and that's the reason is because the government in general, and the teachers and police are both like branches of the government. They're arms of the government. They're like the hands and feet of the government, and all we know how to do is force people to do what we want them to do, with threats of fines or jail time or detention or whatever, and it does not work. I just don't think it's very effective. And so what I want to go through today is, how would this look on a government level, this collaborative problem solving? So we start with empathy. This is the most important step. This would, as I said in the last one, make all the both other steps basically obsolete in 99% of cases. I think that the reason that people are anti-vaxxers, or even like cults, I wrote down cults as an example, because I think people get into cults because they have needs that aren't being met. And they just kind of feel like outcasts. And so this idea of feeling like an outcast, I watched this great documentary. This isn't about cults. I've watched a lot of those documentaries too, but there's one called Erasing Hate, and it's about this guy who got into like a neo-Nazi gang, I guess. And it's funny because we don't call it gangs when it's white people. we only call it gangs when it's black people, but it's like he got into like a white supremacy group, which is a gang. But he had tattoos all over his face. He had this like arrow that represented hate over his eye, and the documentary's about him getting all those tattoos removed off his face and how painful it is, but also how it was like kind of like penance for being a part of this like neo-Nazi white supremacy group. But what I learned, like, I've watched a lot of documentaries on white supremacist groups and neo-Nazis and things like that. I find it very interesting. And cults, too. And people get into these groups. The reason that Joe Biden's concerned about the AR-15 guns is because of domestic terrorism, right? They listed that as, like, the #1 threat recently. And the reason people get into these groups that you would consider domestic, or I don't know, like are in danger of being domestic threats, is because they feel lonely, they feel displaced, they feel like they're out of control of their own lives. A lot of times they're not doing well financially, so they don't have any control over, you know, what happens in their lives. They're isolated. They are angry because they feel so isolated, and they don't have a group. And you know, like, it's interesting because I think of like you know, like, we used to have religion as a really important part of our society, that, you know, we connected with people and through our religion, and we've lost that recently. More and more we're losing this idea of religion. We're having more people who are considered nuns, N-O-N. They don't associate with a religion. So the reason is because on the census they check off none when it asks what religion they are. They don't wear habits. But anyway, they don't have a place to connect with people. And so people are going to the internet to connect with people. And what they're finding is these really extreme groups, right? Like anti-vax groups, flat earthers. Some of them are dangerous. Some of them are, like, flat earthers aren't dangerous, but like that's a group where they feel like they're connecting with like-minded people. And our society is severely lacking that in real life. And so we go online and we find these groups, and we become part of these Facebook groups or chat rooms or 8chan or 4chan or whatever it's called now, 8kun or whatever. Yeah, KUN, I think it's called now. All these weird places to find people, Reddit, you know, like, to find people who are like-minded. Clubhouse is now another app that people are going to feel connected to other people. Okay, so everybody has needs that are not being met, right? And all these groups that I'm talking about these people have needs that are not being met. And obviously the government can't fix that problem. You know, like, that, this is a very deep problem in our society. But the important thing is you don't actually need to fix the problem. Like, that's why empathy is such an important step, because oftentimes if you just listen to them, these people feel like they're not being listened to, and they feel like they're out of control in their lives. And if you empathize with them, all of a sudden they're like, why am I in this group? This is stupid. You know, like the guy with the tattoos on his face. You know, like, I don't remember exactly why he left, but a lot of people leave white supremacy groups on their own once they realize that this is nonsense, and, you know, and they find other people that they can connect with, and they don't need this anymore, and they realize it's not good for their lives. Daryl, oh no, I'm gonna forget his name. He's a black blues musician, and he goes and talks to KKK members, and he makes friends with them, and then they leave. And just the fact that he's friends with them, they can't reconcile how they're friends with a black guy that they really like and he's really nice, and they're in the KKK. So they end up leaving the KKK. It's an amazing documentary. I'll link it in the YouTube video, but I forget what it's called. Oh, man, I wish I didn't forget that. Daryl Davis is his name. Look up Daryl Davis. He's amazing. He does a TED Talk. Okay, so the second step is concerns. So putting both concerns. Now, a lot of times what the government does is dismisses people's concerns and does not treat them with the respect that they need. And this goes for, like, both sides of the political spectrum, right? So I think this is really important. You know, indigenous people feel not listened to. They feel isolated. They feel lonely. And that's why in a lot of those communities they turn to alcohol and drugs and things like that, is because they feel isolated, lonely, and all those things. And when I listen to indigenous people talk about, like, say the pipeline, that it's kind of debated now whether it should be put in. Like, indigenous people are debating about it, and I think the most important thing that they want is to be listened to, that the government would actually consult them and listen to them and take into consideration. And it doesn't mean you have to do everything they want, but if you just take into consideration what they want and you listen, it solves a lot of problems. So indigenous people of color, white supremacists, anti-vaxxers, all of these people want the same thing. They want the government to listen to their concerns, because at the end of the day, I think that I'm gonna say that all of these groups, and maybe that's not true, but maybe it's not quite all, but almost all of these groups, they they have real concerns about their life and the way their life goes and their people or whatever. They have real legitimate concerns about the way the world operates. You know, anti-vaxxers have a problem with big pharma. That's a real problem. And we saw that in the pandemic, I think, and we're seeing it now with the suppression of ivermectin as a treatment. Um, Big pharma is a big problem, and you know, anti-vaxxers, I think, are trying to call that out, and I think they I don't even think they would be anti-vaxxers if you just listen to them and listen to their concerns, because you would build up trust. So for the most part, people just want to be listened to. They want to feel like their concerns are being heard. Doesn't this just resonate with everybody? We all want to feel like our concerns are actually being listened to, whether it's from a friend or our spouse or whatever, our kids coming to us with their problems. Everybody just wants to be heard, and they don't want to be dismissed. Why does everybody dismiss everybody so easily? It really drives me crazy, because people do. They tend to just dismiss and go, yeah, whatever. Like, or they come up with a really easy solution, and that's our whole government does that about everything. Easy answers, you know. Getting rid of Aunt Jemima on the syrup bottle. That's an easy answer. That's an easy way. Or canceling Canada Day, which, you know, is what's happening with about the Indigenous mass graves. That's not a solution. That's an easy answer that doesn't actually fix the real issue. Both those things. And so real solutions are more complicated and more nuanced, and we've been content with easy answers from the government. I don't want to say anything else. Yeah, I think that's it. I think I think we all know that we've had experiences in our lives where we just wanted to be heard. We wanted somebody to listen to us. My friend was telling me a story about Shoppers Drug Mart, and he was in there, and the supervisor yelled at this younger kid who was obviously new, and he called like the customer service, and eventually got a hold of somebody, and they listened to his concern, and they said, yeah, no, like, we've had problems like this in the past with this person, blah blah blah, whatever. And like they were like the first question they asked was, what compensation do you want? And he was like, I don't want compensation. I'm calling because this kid was like harassed by the supervisor, and he shouldn't have been. And it's about the principle of it, right? And because compensation is another easy answer. When I used to work at Naples Pizza, people would come in and complain about their pizza, and then we would just give up free pops, free 2 liters of pop, because that was an easy way to get them to shut up. Like, really, that's what it was. And so we're obsessed with easy answers. We don't actually want to fix real issues, and so these issues keep growing and growing and growing, underground. You can tell people to not be racist, but underground they're still going to be racist. So just because you ban certain words or certain ideas, or not even ideas, but you say, like, you can't say that on Twitter or whatever, you're not actually fixing the real problem, which is that these people have real concerns, and they're not being heard, and that's really what it comes down to. Okay, let's move on to solutions. So the important part about solutions, right, is that we let the less powerful people come up with the solutions. So in this case, it's like anti-vaxxers. What's your solution, right? So we both put our concern on the table, right? Anti-vaxxers, maybe their concern is like, I didn't really talk about concerns that much. Maybe their concern is like, they just want the freedom to choose whether they get vaxxed or not. They don't want it to be forced on them, and they feel like it's forced. And the government wants people to be safe, right? They want people to not get this disease, right? Like, let's say smallpox or whatever. So, if anti-vaxxers can come up with a way to solve both those problems, then there's no more problem. The problem's gone. And if they were able to come up with the solution themselves, the thing is the reason that this is so important, that the weaker, less powerful party comes up with a solution, is that they're more likely to actually go with it and follow it. And that's what you want as the more powerful person, as the teacher or the parent, right? If a kid comes up with a solution, they're more likely to actually do it, and then it solves your problem, right? Because you put your concern on the table, they came up with a solution that solved your concern. Game over, right? If they're more likely to follow it, that's great. You know, you might not get to feel like Mr. Tough Guy, like Joe Biden, you know, threatening his whole country with nukes. You know, I'm sure he feels real tough, but like, you know, that's not really the point. The point is that these people are part of your country, and you need to take their concerns seriously, listen to them, so that, and then let them come up with the solution that solves your concern too, which, you know, for the government oftentimes is safety. How do we keep people safe, right? And like, I did another podcast on, like, you know, freedom and safety, and how much freedom versus how much safety. I think that's a big question. But at the end of the day, the government wants people to be as safe as possible, and the people usually want to be as free as possible. So we have to find a balance that works for, you know, it's not going to work for everybody, but for as many people as possible. You know, so they're more likely to follow it if they come up with it themselves. So if anti-vaxxers come up with a solution and they follow it, then your problem's solved, right? If it solves your concern, which is what you want, problem solved. And so this is tough because anti-vaxxers aren't an organized group with a leader that can speak on their behalf or anything. So it's tough. But I think especially with something like anti-vax, I think just listening to people is the most important thing. And if we just did the first step, just go to the empathy step, right? Just listen to indigenous people. Just listen to people of color. Just listen to white supremacists. Listen to all these people and hear their concerns for real, and take them seriously, and don't dismiss them. And I think a lot of problems would just naturally go away. And if they don't, then we can move to the next steps and figure out, how do we solve some of these problems? You know, like, you know, again, it's tough because it is on a bigger level, but I think that the philosophy would work. And what I see is people just dismissing things. I see people doing exactly what I see teachers and parents and other adults do to kids all the time, which is dismiss their concerns and not listen to them. And really, they're ignoring them. And it's heartbreaking to see with kids. I think it's even more heartbreaking to see on a societal level, because we don't even understand what this would look like. I sound like I'm talking about like some magic that's not even real, because this is such a ridiculous idea. But I think that this is one of the best ways to have a better society. Anyway, that's all I got to say. Yeah, thank you so much for listening to The Underground, the podcast where we talk about the world and how weird and crazy and messed up it is. I'm your host, Duncan Michael McPherson. Please like this podcast on social media. Share it. Subscribe on YouTube. Yeah, I like doing these podcasts, so please give me feedback. I want feedback from people. I want to hear your comments on YouTube or on Facebook or whatever. Like, just let me know if you like it, if you think anything should be different, if I said anything wrong that maybe I should correct next time. Yeah, let me know. And God bless everybody.
From the dark.